Hello and thanks for joining us today on RTV News. I am Isabel Masozera. This is what we have coming up. On April 8th, Tutsis were massacred across the country, and on the same date, RPF soldiers rescued Rwandans said to be killed for how they were born. Now, some of the members of Unity and Reconciliation clubs say that these clubs are facilitating unity through forgiveness, but also eradicating poverty. We're glad you chose RTV News. Top of our edition. As we begin, let us inform you that on Saturday afternoon at Village Urugwiro, President Paul Kagame received a delegation from Aspen Institute Henry Crowd Fellowship, established to develop community-spirited leaders out of a pool of accomplished, entrepreneurs. Now, the program was first established back in 1997, and each year a class of 20 to 22 leaders is chosen to engage in a thought-provoking journey of personal exploration into being able to go beyond success to a place of growing significance in the world. On April 8th, in 1994, Tutsis were massacred in various parts of the country. On that same date, RPF Nkotanyi rescued Rwandans said to be killed for how they were born across the country. Prince Manzi has more.
7th April 1994, Tutsi from Nyamirambo in Kivugiza, Biryoga, and the Mumena regions of fled to St. Andre and Karori Rwanga parish were massacred on 8th April 1994.
On the 8th April, in the morning, at 10 a.m., we heard Interahamwe militias entering the parish. I don't know what they said for us to lay down. And they came in with machetes, grenades, throwing them at us.
And at the moment, we saw a truck, and Interahamwe militias threw bodies in. We later found out that at the Nyamirambo barrio, there was a machine that would dig and the truck would throw the bodies in, and the machine returns the soil over. The 8th of April 1994, the Tutsi were killed across the country. Tutsi who fled at the Mata tea factory in Nyaruguru district were all massacred. The Tutsi who tried to flee to what was at the time Zaire, now the DRC, Interahamwe militias would stop them and collectively take them to Rusura in Wujeshi sector and kill them. On 8th, 14th, and 25th April 1994, Tutsi who fled to Ruhuha Catholic Parish were massacred. On this same date, in 1994, 5,000 Tutsi were massacred at the Chambara Adventist Church in Bigogwe. Tutsi who fled to Shira Hospital in Nyabihu district were massacred. The command of stopping the genocide against the Tutsi was provided on 7th April at 3 p.m. by the current President of the Republic, His Excellency Paul Kagame, who at the time the Commander-in-Chief of Rwanda Patriotic Army. After the command, 3 battalions, composed of 600 soldiers who were at C&D, started defending themselves and rescuing the Tutsi being killed. On the 8th April 1994, various RPF troops took different directions for rescuing Rwandans. Some of the battalions, namely Alpha, 59 and Bravo, came to Kigali. Sheikh Abdul Karim Harerimana states that every battalion was given special command. In the commands included stopping the genocide, rescuing the lives being killed, and supporting the 600 soldiers in C&D. The government decided to become perpetrators. It is to be removed in office, and its army is to be defeated if it resists in the fight. For survivors, what the RPF soldiers did was extraordinary, heroic. Some of the 600 soldiers came in Nyamirambo. We were rescued by 3 soldiers, and were among the 600 who took various directions, including Gikondo, Nyamirambo, One would go in front of us, another in between, and the other at the end of the line. We could not believe that we would reach at C&D, but heroically we reached there with their uniforms torn apart, because sometimes they had to crawl to see if there are no intruders getting in the line. The genocide against the Tutsi started on the 7th April 1994 and was stopped on 4th July 1994 by the RPA soldiers, and their heroism is appreciated by many. Prince Manzi, RwandaTV News.
As we continue to honor the lives that are lost, we also honor the sacrifice of those who gave up all to save the survivors. Now moving on, some of the members of the Unity and Reconciliation Clubs say that these clubs are facilitating unity through forgiveness, but they are also eradicating poverty. Prince Manzi continues.
Alice Murirwa is a genocide survivor living in the Gahanga sector in Kigali City. She states that forgiving the perpetrator of her family members was not easy.
There
was a man named Ndembe. He used to be my neighbor. He tried to ask me for forgiveness and I ran. He came the second time. I also tried to run. But the third time, I told him that I forgave him. Afterwards, I stopped running. I passed by his house and I would greet him. And then he would also reply.
This sector has a speciality of having many unity and reconciliation clubs composed of survivors and perpetrators of the genocide against the Tutsi in 1994. These clubs played a big role in prompting perpetrators to request for forgiveness and survivors to forgive them, and now they partner in building the nation.
You do not always have to carry the grudge, because we pray to God, even though he did worse, but you have to forgive him and move on. And it doesn't stop you from mourning your loved one.
I briefly told her about the death of her parents, and she asked me if I wrote and asked for forgiveness. I told her yes, but for writing and asking for forgiveness to the government without asking you for pardon, it was not right. For me to find you now, I asked for forgiveness. I knelt, begging, and she told me not to do so because she forgave me. Now our families are united. Recently, there was a mass celebration of 4 years since our reunion. They emphasized us on asking for forgiveness, and we did, and we were also forgiven. The chairperson of Ibuka in Gahanga sector, Anastasia Ndagijimana, emphasizes that the establishment of these unity and reconciliation clubs made the members also participate in activities that boost their economies. Firstly, they made the first step of asking forgiveness and forgive. Now, they collaborate in various economic activities. So this means that if the perpetrators and survivors collaborate, they are united and one. A water tap named Amahoro in this sector is also a demonstration of the step made in unity and reconciliation in Gahanga. The unity and reconciliation clubs are not a speciality of Gahanga sector, as they are various across the country. Where these clubs function properly, have helped in restoring the unity of Rwandans distracted by bad leadership that led to the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. Prince Manzi, RwandaTV News.
Thank you for that profound report. Indeed, we can hold space for both forgiveness and grief. Moving on, some of the children left behind during the 1994 genocide against the Tutsis say that rebuilding and trauma healing gives them hope. This is said at a time when many young people are still grappling with intergenerational trauma as a result of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi.
A place known as Poilo in the city of Kigali, that is where Gahonzire Valentine operates her business activities of selling new and second-hand tires and other accessories related to that. During the genocide against the Tutsi, Valentine, who was the last born in a family of 6 children, his parents and some of her siblings, who lived in Kiyovu in Kigali city, were killed. I was a teenager. I was very young at that time. After finding myself all alone with no parents, I felt traumatized. We had no hope to study. Our home was totally destroyed. I had no hope of living. Currently, she's a mother with a child, and she says that she has been trying to be resilient. We found hope for living. We continued our studies. Our properties which were damaged, Ibuka supported us and gave us materials for renovation, and we continued with life. We also thank the government for supporting us through it, and if it were not for them, we wouldn't have returned to school. Now I don't feel like an orphan because I have a child. I have dreams to expand my company and make it reach an international level. Mujawamariya Clotilde, who lives in Kamonyi district, was 7 years old back in 1994 during the genocide against the Tutsi. After losing his parents and siblings, she says that she draws strength from her current family. They killed my mother and father. I always had trauma, and during my sleep, those images would come back. But when I look at my children, I feel hope. When one of my children notices that I'm not doing well, she comforts me and tells me that it will be all right. And my children comforts me, and by that, I feel strengthened and I hope for the better. However, Mukakiwi Marceline, who lives in Gacurabwenge sector in Kamonyi district, say that the genocide against the Tutsi left trauma to her last born, who had 1 year during the genocide, and now the child dropped out from school. After the genocide, I was a widow with 3 orphans. The youngest did not manage to study. When my child started in first year, the teacher brought him back to me, saying that the child is usually lonely and that my child doesn't open up to others. And while sleeping, she cries at night. When I tried to talk to her, she usually told me that she feels depressed. According to the Rwanda Biomedical Center, one of the effects of the genocide against the Tutsi includes mental health problems among Rwandans, which is currently between 20 to 26%, which means 1 person in 5 people. Dr. Gishoma Darius from RBC in the Division of Mental Health points out that trauma caused by the genocide against the Tutsi is particular and can be intergenerational.
There is what we call direct exposure, but there's also what you witnessed. For example, those who survived from Murambi, they cannot forget what they witnessed. And the third is knowing the news about how your family was tortured. And this is what normally happened to the kids who are not born yet during the genocide. When they get to learn about what happened, such as knowing that his parent was raped, that definitely has impact on the child, and we can't deny it. And most of the time, there is recurring fear of what happened in the past. And that fear leads to the person always having hormonal imbalance, and that affects his heart and his glucose.
Dr. Shast Uwihoreye, a specialist in mental health, who is also the head of an organization entitled Uisengani Manzi, notes that those who were still young during the genocide against the Tutsi strived to build resilience, even though there are some of them who are still struggling and need support.
There are a few of them who are still burdened, who still have trauma. They are still burdened. And there are others who also sacrificed themselves for the well-being of their siblings, and they didn't even get married. There are also those who got married and conceived children, and they became resilient through having families again and having clubs such as Aheza Center and services of Minisante. All those are measures to keep fighting against all those problems.
According to the Rwanda Biomedical Center research, in 2018, trauma among survivors of the genocide against the Tutsi was at 27.85%, and in Rwandans in general, it is at 3.6%. Olive Nete, RTV News.
Thank you, Olive. It's important to check on survivors and loved ones, even those who seem very strong. Now, officials in the U.S. government, diplomats and friends of Rwanda in the U.S. stood with Rwandans and the world in commencing 100 days of reflection on the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi at an event that took place in Washington, D.C. The ambassador of Rwanda to the United States of America told participants that the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda was planned and executed by a part of Rwandans prompted by the government. The ambassador also noted that remembering is necessary because Rwanda's history must not be repeated.
Kwibuka is important because, first and foremost, this is our history. You cannot fight something without knowing what it really is. History is important in understanding where we come from and where we are heading. Second of all, when we come together as a people to commemorate, it demonstrates that the Rwandan community is still there and alive. We comfort each other. You heard of families who are completely wiped out. But as Rwandans, we are a family to each other.
Console Nishimwe, a genocide survivor and the author of the book Tested to the Limit that describes her journey and her experience at the age of 12, is currently residing in the U.S. and shared with the participants her testimony demonstrating how everyone has a role in fighting anything trying to wrongly portray Rwanda's history.
As a survivor providing testimonies here in the U.S., I found it to be necessary because most of the people do not know what we have been through because of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. So I put in more effort because deniers are also there. The youth here have to know the history so that they can know what truly happened. That's why I believe it has to be done more often, because it is necessary.
28 associations of Rwandans in the U.S. have also prepared similar commemoration events and will be taking place on various dates. In more news, some of the survivors of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi who weren't able to rebuild their houses now say that their houses are very old and they're calling on the government to help them renovate them.
Survivor of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi residing in Kabgayi, Kamonyi district, says that as a mother left behind with young children, owning a house would be a solution to the problem of renting. We are happy. Sometimes we would stay in people's houses, but they would come and evict us. We were so fortunate that someone decided to build for us houses that we can now call our own. Since 1994, the government of Rwanda started a program to accommodate vulnerable survivors of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. Today, some of the houses built by the survivors back in 1994 are not in good shape. Some are in need of renovation, while others are completely destroyed and need to be rebuilt. Some of the survivors say they do not have the resources to renovate their houses. Sometimes the wind comes in, even the water, and they get to destroy the house, as you can see. And we don't have the resources to rebuild. Life is very hard, and it is hard to survive nowadays. Our parent is sick and is in the hospital. We are requesting for help to renovate so that the money that could have been used to renovate can be used in other ways. The executive director in charge of community resilience at the Ministry of National Unity and Civic Engagement, Wachu Julien, says that the ministry is aware of the challenge that the survivors are facing and they are making headway in solving it. What I can say is that from 1994 to 2012, houses were built in a rush and with the resources we had at that time. That is why the houses are different from the ones that we have nowadays. Today, we have the burden to try and rebuild them, but we're looking into locating those very houses. On the 31st of last month is when we released one of the eastern province, because that is where it began, and Kigali is where the focus was at first. The Ministry of National Unity and Civic Engagement currently indicates that there's no credible data available for the houses of the survivors of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi that are needed that need to be renovated, because information is still being collected on the owners of the houses, including those who are going to sell them. Once all of this is known, then the exact number of those approved will be determined.
Our thoughts and prayers remain with the survivors. I am Isabel Masozera. Do stay with RTV.